What is the gift?
Welcome back to Recap World. Today we are going to recap a 2004 comedy erotic movie titled A Dirty Shame. Sylvia runs a store with her husband and her mother-in-law. One day Sylvia is hit on the head and transforms from an upright prude to a sex addict. But before we begin, please consider subscribing to our channel. Now, without wasting any further time, let's begin, shall we? Our movie begins with a woman named Sylvia who has a fiery temper that has a negative impact on her marriage with her husband, Vaughan. She brings breakfast to her daughter, Caprice, who is under house arrest for disruptive conduct related to nudity. She frequently clashes with him since she does not know how to do anything other than hostile. Despite the fact that she is on her way to work, she can run her car out of gas. This of course generates traffic. As a result, a guy accelerates out of lane, striking Sylvia with the equipment on the back of his truck, resulting in a concussion. However, the truck driver observes Sylvia's sexual repression from a mile away. As a result, he resolves to take matter in his own hands in order to relieve her of her burden. He turns out to be sexual healer who can turn anyone into an addict. Before leaving, he invites her to his center and hands her his business card. Sylvia begins to notice everyone's new sexual habits in public throughout the day. She even begins to discover obscene graffiti on walls. Nonetheless, she begins to exhibit some conduct toward clients at the family store where she works. Eventually, lust overtakes her and she begs Vaughan to take her home and he may make love to her, and he gladly obliges. Ethel, Sylvia's mother, hosts a meeting in the business a few hours later to rid the community of all of the sex addicts. Meanwhile, Sylvia and Vaughan pay a visit to Vaughan's mother. When they arrive, everyone is dancing in a circle to a song. Sylvia, on the other hand, is unable to dance normally since she is constantly turning out by the men surrounding her. As a result, she begins nasty dancing in front of everyone, scaring them away. Later that night, Sylvia anxiously searches the neighborhood for something to wear. She calls a cab and heads to truck driver's center as soon as she can. When she tries to start sex with the cab driver, she is thrown out of the car. She obviously ends up walking to her destination. Sylvia eventually comes to the center. She discovers that they have a gang of sex addicts who are all into different kinds of fetishes. Sylvia is surprised to find that they are what cause people to become hypersexual, and at his request, everyone in the room begins to have sex with Sylvia. Meanwhile, Vaughan is looking for a missing wife when he comes across his neighbor Betty, who opens the door naked right next to her husband. He rushes out the door worried. Sylvia, on the other side, is on her way home via bus. When she flashes the bus driver in hopes of seducing him, she clearly succeeds. At home, Sylvia enters Caprice's room with a newfound attitude that astounds her daughter. They have heart to heart, and Sylvia discovers that her daughter suffered a concussion when she was 11. So Sylvia decides to take Caprice to a pub to meet men who met their criteria. Vaughan and Ethel, on the other hand, eventually catches them sprinting down the street. Vaughan discovers his daughter stripping at the pub while Sylvia receives oral sex from stranger. As a result of witnessing all of this, fighting erupts in the bar from Ethel. As a result, Sylvia is hit in the head with a bottle, resulting in another concussion. So Sylvia finally snaps out of the trance and has kept her trapped in hypersexuality. Sylvia recovers from her injuries a few days later while learning what she did the past several days. Although Vaughan and Ethel are lecturing her about her crimes, Caprice has a different point of view, stating that she finally supports her mother's sexual liberation. As a result, Sylvia tries to convince them that she is a promised group member tasked finding with new sex act. Ethel, on the other hand, isn't having any of it. Caprice's frustrated attempt to hurt her mother in order to regain her liberty. However, she is one who suffers a concussion as part of ceiling collapses on her. Following that, Vaughan decides to take Sylvia and Caprice to a meeting for recovered sex addict. Despite the fact that things are going well for them, Ray Ray's crew sneaks into the conference to dwell everyone's success. As a result, Ray Ray's influence affects all of the recovered sex addicts, returning them to their former selves, including Sylvia and Caprice. On the other hand, manages to drug Ray Ray and with antidepressants, causing his libido to plummet. Ethel holds the demonstration in the store a few hours later to put an end to Ray Ray's organization, which is terrorizing the entire area. The medicines, on the other hand, have an effect on Ray Ray's sexual healing capacity. His group, on the other hand, is able to treat him by giving him another nutrients. Meanwhile, Ethel's shop is overrun by sex addicts. Then she and her companions do everything they can to evict them without restoring to violence. Sylvia, on the other hand, is rushing around the neighborhood looking for someone to sleep with. Finally, she comes across a vehicle accident and discovers a man suffering from the first concussion. Capri subsequently suffers her second concussion, which causes her to revert to her sexual habits. Desperate, Ethel and Vaughan flee to the store onto the streets with sexual deviants. They soon come across Ray Ray, who is leading a dozen people with megaphone and yelling about the coming true. Vaughan suffers his first concussion as a result of human faces falling from nearby airliner. Ethel collapses in shock after discovering that everyone around her is a sex addict. Meanwhile, Sylvia is overjoyed that her spouse has discovered sexual freedom. She then has vision of the new sex act and how to perform it, which is by pleasure headbutting. Everyone soon begins to follow her footsteps. Vaughan's conclusion was inflicted by a plane. Ray Ray, on the other hand, decides to heal Ethel from the fall, which leads to her eventually succumbing to sexual trance. As a result, everyone in the city experiences sexual liberation and Ray Ray attains projection, and this is where the movie ends. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, until next time.